My name is Johnny Hug, and I love food.
I've spent over 25 years studying food and working as a professional chef. During that time, I've traveled across the country and around the world. One thing I've discovered is that a lot of my favorite food comes from right here, where I call home. Come with me now as I visit some of the farms and meet some of the people who help grow and produce this great food. We'll see why what they do is so special and unique. Then I'll take some of their fantastic products back to my kitchen and show you some recipes that you can make in your own home. I'm so excited to share with you what it is that makes me a Vermont foodie.
Today we're at Boston Post Dairy in Enosburg Falls. It's a lovely goat farm. They have tons and tons of products available here. But today we're here because we're going to talk about cheese. Cheese is something that's near and dear to my heart. I've loved it for years, and I'm really excited to learn about the cheese making process. And that's why we're here with Anne, who is the head cheesemaker here at Boston Post, and her two magnificent helpers, cheese assistants A and number 1. And we're going to talk about the farm. So hi, Anne. Thank you for being on the show.
No problem. It's a pleasure having you here with us.
Thanks. I'm really glad to be here. So Boston Post, really one of the things that struck me above and beyond is that this is truly a family farm. You've got family members helping out everywhere, multi-generational family working on the farm, and that's something that's really special about this place. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that first.
Absolutely. So I grew up with 14 siblings, so there's 15 in our family, and we all grew up farming. So if you wanted to eat, basically you had to work. But we grew up on the Boston Post Road, and my father bought this farm for us, for the girls. And we started doing cheeses and specialty products and bakery, and with all sisters. And then brought in our grandchildren because they had to go somewhere during the summer, so they learned the process with us. And actually, if you look up at the wall, there's a sign that she wrote in kindergarten that says, "I dream of being a cheesemaker when I grow up." I don't know if she still feels that way, but. So we have, the farm is run primarily by women. And like I said, we're all sisters. And then my sister has her daughters working out there, and then her grandchildren are coming up as well. So yes, it's totally a family business.
Wow, that's beautiful. So can you give me a quick overview of the cheesemaking process you use here?
Yeah, sure. We make a lot of different cheeses, so there's not just one process, but it usually starts at 6 o'clock in the morning. We pump the milk over from the barn because we only use our milk, and we'll make whatever cheese that is. It gets pasteurized, and then the process takes through most of the day, and then you were able to help us during what we call the hooping of the cheese, which is putting it into those molds, and then the flipping of the cheese, which is this, so then now they're happy on the press, and they're just going to wait until morning, and we'll flip them again.
What styles of cheese do you make here?
Oh, we make different styles. So I make everything from a chev, which was one of our first cheeses because we didn't have a press. And then I do Tome-style cheeses, Gouda-style cheeses, cow cream cheese spreads, curds, goat and cow curds. And we have the Italian style, that's Matty Rose. And did I name them all? County Tails and White Diamond, which is the Camembert.
Wow, fantastic. So of all the varieties of cheese you make here, which one would you say is your personal favorite?
My personal favorite is Très Bon. It's a Gouda style, and it was the first cheese that I made that it's got a nice nutty taste to it. It's my favorite.
Very nice. What would you say is the most popular cheese you make here?
The most popular cheese is the 11 Brothers, because we're nicknamed by some places the home of the 11 Brothers cheese, because we named it 11 Brothers because it was our first hard cheese that we made. And we had 11 brothers growing up, so that was equally as hard. But they all turned out well, so the name and the cheese for the boys stayed. But that, we sell the most of that. We've made the most batches of that cheese.
Nice. So if somebody was watching this and they wanted to try some Boston Post cheese, but it was relatively new to them, what's a good way for them to get a hold of some of your cheeses to try out?
Well, depending on where they live, we have an online ordering site that you can go right to our website and you can order whatever you like. or we have a distributor that distributes in all the New England states, well, most of them like Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, Connecticut, Maine, and Vermont, and parts of Connecticut, that is. So you can find it at specialty cheese shops at those places too, and co-ops as well.
Wow, fantastic. Well, of course, Vermont Foodie is a cooking show.
Yes.
And part of my mission is to learn where all of this food comes from, but also part of my mission is to take something back and cook with it. So I was wondering what you've got for me to take back to the kitchen today.
Well, girls, what do we have for John to take back?
We have Vermont. We have goat cheddar curds.
Goat cheddar curds.
And this is 11 Brothers Reserve, which has been aged over a year.
Wow.
And then what do you have?
Giselle.
Giselle, which is an Alpine style that's washed with a spiced apple cider finish.
Wow, I'm really excited to try it. Excellent.
Can't wait
a
to see
lot.
you do.
Yeah, thanks a lot, and thanks for having us here today.
You're very welcome. Thanks for your help.
Thanks. Hey, we just got back from Boston Post Dairy, and what a great time that was. You know, we only got really a small peek at the whole cheese making process. I had the opportunity to be there earlier and see some that we weren't able to catch on camera, and it's really a day-long enterprise. But boy, it's really neat, and the cheese they make is just outstanding. And speaking of which, I really need to preface this segment about Boston Post with the fact that in tasting their cheeses and developing the recipes for this show, I almost feel like it's a disservice to their cheese to do anything with it but just eat it and enjoy it the way it is. It is fantastic, and if you have the slightest inkling about just trying the cheese, by all means, go out and do it. It's just fantastic. It's a great standalone product. But, like I said to Anne back at the interview, this is a cooking show. I am going to cook with this cheese. So, today we're going to make two things with Boston Post cheese. We're going to take the cheddar goat curd that she gave me, and we're going to make macaroni and cheese because it's a perennial favorite. So many people love it, and it goes great with cheddar. And then we're going to also take the Giselle that she gave me as kind of a challenge, which is the Alpine style cheese that's washed with the spiced cider. And I'm going to use that to show you all how to make a classic French croque monsieur. Croque monsieur basically is a grilled ham and cheese sandwich. We're going to see that later too. So, first thing we're going to do is talk about the technique that I want to focus on this episode. Remember, we're going to try and do techniques more than recipes. And the technique I want to show you today is how to make a bechamel sauce. Bechamel is a very basic white sauce made from milk, flour, and butter. 3 ingredients only. It's very simple, very easy, and we use that as a jumping off point for many, many, many other sauces. And we'll talk about that as we get going. So we're going to start today by cooking our pasta for our macaroni and cheese. I didn't go with a traditional macaroni. I went with little spirals. They're called gemelli, just because I thought we're using this special cheese. I really want to make it stand out, be something a little bit different. So we've got our nice boiling water, and very easily we'll add some pasta. Of course, we're going to lose a little of our boil for the moment, but that'll come back quickly. And even to help that out, we're going to keep the lid on it.
So while our macaroni is cooking, we're going to start working on our bechamel. Like I said earlier, very easy, 3 ingredients only. First ingredient is butter, and all we're trying to do is melt our butter. After our butter melts, we're going to stir the flour into the melted butter. This is called making a roux. A roux is a very classic French technique, and what that's going to do is it's going to allow the milk to thicken. Now, if you were to pour flour into your cold milk without making a roux first, you would get little balls and lumps of flour, and it would be not the best for making a delicious sauce. It won't incorporate smoothly and evenly into the rest of the sauce. So, our butter is nice and melted. Now, once again, I'm teaching you a technique, not a recipe. We're going to add a little bit of flour at a time to the butter, and I will tell you when it looks right, because that's how we're going to determine when we've got enough. So as you can see, it's not a whole lot. I'm going to stir it around. But I can already tell you that it looks like I darn near got it perfect on the first shot. So here we have roux. All right, it looks kind of like a light brown toothpaste. Now this roux is in a hot pan, and you can see it's still simmering and bubbling and sputtering away. We could continue cooking it if we wanted to. And as that flour cooks, the roux is going to slowly turn a darker and darker brown. And there are many uses for roux, and there are many uses for all colors of roux. Cajun cooking is a great example where they like to cook their roux over a low flame for a very long period of time and get it super duper brown. And that's great. And that suits Cajun food just fine. But for our application today, this is perfect. So all we're going to do now is add our milk. And we're going to let this come up to a boil, stirring as we do. We'll add a little bit of salt. And just a couple cracks of pepper. All right, so we've got our pasta cooking and we've got our bechamel simmering and bubbling away. One important thing to remember when you're making a bechamel is that you want a nice rolling boil, and you want that for at least 3 or 4 minutes. What that does is it cooks the starch in the flour so that you don't have a raw flour kind of gummy flavor. As you can see here, we've been cooking for a couple of minutes and it's getting quite thick. You can tell by the way the bubbles look as they're popping. And that is a fully functional and usable bechamel. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take it off the heat for a moment and let it cool down. Right there. While we start working with our other ingredients. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to start working on our croque monsieur. Our pasta has a little bit of time to go, but croque monsieur is all set. We've got all the ingredients just about ready here. So what we're going to do is first we're going to start with some really nice bread. Now you can do this with white sandwich bread if you want. That's perfectly fine. You don't need to go out and spend extra money on nice fancy bread like this. This is a good sourdough loaf. It's a little crusty. I spent some time in France learning about food, and while I was there, I really acquired quite a love for really good bread. Bread over there is different than it is here in America, and once you've got that addiction, it's really hard to quit. So I went out and sunk $5 into a decent loaf of bread. So what we're going to do for our croque monsieur is we're just going to cut slices straight up and down, just like we were making a regular old sandwich. And I think I'm going to try and fit 4 sandwiches on my little baking tray. So I'm going to get 8 slices of bread. Now this is a sandwich that is a knife and fork sandwich. You're not going to pick this up with your fingers and eat it. It's going to be ooey and gooey and delicious all at the same time. But part of that ooey gooiness means you're going to be a mess if you try and grab this. Now it's that good that you may want to try it. And if you really have the perspicacity to go ahead and grab this sandwich with melted cheese all over the top with your fingers to eat it, be my guest. All right, so we've got our bread sliced. We've got a nice baking tray. We're going to let's keep our slices lined up and matched just so that the sizes all sync up when we go to put our sandwiches together later and eat them. So we'll put 2 here, like so. 2 here. Now I'm going to take my lids and I'm going to match them together so I can keep track of what bread goes with what. In the meantime, I'm noticing that our gemelli, our little spiral pasta, is all done and ready. So I'm going to take that and just let it drain while we work. So the pasta can sit in the colander. That's perfectly fine. By the time we get back to it, it's still going to be warm, still going to be loose, it's going to be delicious. We would not, however, want to hold it in the pot of water, because the more you do that, the more water is going to absorb. And if you leave it long enough, you're going to wind up with nothing but mush. Then we'd have mush and cheese. With this cheese, it'd probably still be delicious, but we want to retain the texture today. So next step, we've got our lovely bechamel that we've made. As you can see, it's growing fairly thick. If you were to put this in the refrigerator and cool it off, it would get quite thick. If you wanted to make bechamel and put it in the refrigerator and cool it off, you could absolutely do that. I could have made this yesterday and not shown you how to do that at all. I could just pull the bechamel out and spread it on the bread like butter and pop our sandwiches in the oven. But remember, I want you to be able to see how to do this straight through so that you can make it yourself at home. So we're going to take some of our bechamel and spread it right on top. It's okay to go a little heavy-handed if you want, because this is super great and super delicious. Next step, we've got some delicious ham. You can use any ham you like. Pick something you prefer. If you want to use very thin sandwich ham, if you want to use a little bit thicker slice, what we have here, just pick what you like. That's key to all cooking. Make the food that you want to eat. So I'm going to lay the ham thusly on our bread. We'll ham up one of them. Well, let's do it to it. Why not, you know? We'll put the ham to it. And of course, our star ingredient, Boston Post Giselle, which is the Alpine style cheese. Boy, this is fantastic. So all we're going to do with our Giselle is we're just going to shred it, grate it, right on top. A nice good coating. You spent the money on this cheese. It's fantastic cheese, as I was mentioning earlier. It's so delicious, you don't really need to do anything to it. So don't be shy. Put the cheese right to it. We're going to hold on to this for later, because next step is to put the tops on. Unlike a traditional grilled cheese sandwich, we're going to spread our bechamel on top of the bread, like so. Hence the ooey gooey part. Once again, I'm not being shy with it here. All right, I'm just going to separate these a little bit so that when we're all said and done, we can still tell where the sandwiches are, right? Under this heaping mass of molten cheese we're about to make. And then we're going to take the Giselle and go right at it again. More, more, more. More cheese. Great. So there is the Croque Monsieur, ready to go into the oven. Now we're just going to pop these in the oven. We're going to leave them in there, and it's a very hot oven. I've set it to 425 degrees. We're going to leave them there until the cheese melts and starts to turn brown and bubbly. Then we're going to get them out. We will put them on our serving platter, and like I said earlier, this is a knife and fork kind of sandwich. We'll actually serve and eat them from individual plates. So let's go to the oven. In they go. Look at that. So it may occur to you that it'd be a wise idea to use the broiler instead of having a hot oven. But what you really want to do is heat the entire sandwich through. If you use the broiler, what's going to happen is all the cheese on top is going to get brown and bubbly before what's inside has a chance to warm up or even melt. So we've got our hot oven going. We're going to not worry about that. We're going to let it hang out for a little while we talk about our goat cheddar curd mac and cheese. So for the goat cheddar curd mac and cheese, we're going to warm our bechamel back up, which is our mother sauce. It's a very classic term for it. And you can see almost instantly we're coming back to some nice bubbles. And it's nice and thick. Now part of what I want to do with these great goat cheddar curds is retain the texture and the size of the curds. I really want to make sure that when we eat this macaroni and cheese, there are chunks of cheese to bite into and not just a straightforward, smooth, creamy sauce. So I'm just gonna sprinkle our cheddar curd in. Some of the really big ones I might break up with my fingers a little bit. And just like we did with our Giselle on our Croque Monsieurs, I'm going to go pretty heavy-handed. This is about the cheese, all right? You got the time to get this great cheese. You might as well enjoy it. Don't be shy, all right? Eat it right up. So I'm very lightly going to stir this cheese in. So once again, we want to incorporate the cheesy flavor into our sauce. Oh, look at that. But we don't want to melt the cheese down into nothing. Okay, and that's as far as I'm going to go before I come in with the pasta. So here's our pasta. Gently, gently. Now that's how you make a full pan of mac and cheese. Enough for all your friends. And we're going to gently stir this around. Now, if your pasta's cooled off a little bit from sitting in your colander while you developed your cheese sauce and maybe made some cheese sandwiches at the same time, this nice hot bechamel is going to warm it right back up for you. And look, you can still see the cheese curds, big chunks of cheese to bite down and chew and get that cheese curd squeak. And that is really all there is to it. We made our bechamel sauce. We seasoned the sauce with salt and pepper while we were working on it. We had some bechamel to make our lovely croque monsieurs with that we'll check on in just a moment. And then we incorporated our cheese and our macaroni to make a nice macaroni and cheese. So not only is this a technique of making a bechamel, but a technique of making macaroni and cheese from scratch at home. You can use any kind of cheese you want. You can use any kind of pasta you want. You can make it exactly how you want. And that is ready to go. So we'll take it right to our serving plate. What a pile of mac and cheese. The kids are going to love it. Don't forget to get all that sauce. And there we are. Let's take a look in the oven and see how our croque monsieurs are doing. Okay, our cheese is starting to melt. It smells fantastic. I wish you could smell this. So we're still waiting for a little bit of bubble. We want the cheese to start caramelizing and turning brown. That's going to add even more flavor. When cheese or anything caramelizes, what happens and why it turns brown when it's caramelizing is that all the naturally occurring sugars in whatever food you're caramelizing, whether it's cheese or onions or fruit on the grill, those naturally occurring sugars are starting to melt and turn to caramel. That's why we call it caramelizing. And caramel, of course, is delicious. So that's why we work to achieve caramel without adding sugar by melting things and browning them slowly in a hot, hot oven. All right, everything's brown and bubbly. Are you ready to see? Here we go. B-E-A, beautiful. Look at that. That is exactly what we're talking about right there. Not super duper brown. We're not talking an overcooked pizza here. But you got just the light bubbles. You can see the cheese melted. You got the ham coming out the side. We're ready to go to the platter to share with our friends. Got to be a little bit gingerly because they've got some melted cheese around the side where they've fallen down, so they're a little sticky. So we'll save these ones to share. But this one is for me. It really would be dishonest of me to just cook this food and then not show you how delicious it is. It's a labor of love. So the bread is still soft, crispy around the outside. Everything is hot all the way through. This is a big bite. I'm not going to do it. So you really do manage to pull this apart in the action. Here we go. Great bread, very good ham, and excellent cheese. Definitely a grilled cheese sandwich that's a little bit out of the ordinary for most of you, I'm sure, but well worth the extra time. But let's not forget to try the macaroni and cheese as well. So we've got the macaroni, and I'm definitely going to make sure that I fish out one of these giant cheddar curds right there. If anything, I would use less macaroni and more cheese, which is fitting really because this cheese is so fantastic. I can't speak to it enough. So thank you very much, Anne. Thank you, Boston Post Dairy, for sharing with us, you know, the whole process and these wonderful cheeses. And you'll see more Boston Post Dairy cheese on some of our other episodes as well. So don't forget to check those out too. Thanks again for watching Vermont Foodie. I'm John Newhart.